The freezer door wouldn't budge. Marcus Williams pressed his shoulder against the industrial steel, confused. In his 15 years as night janitor at Belmore Country Club, he'd never known this door to stick. The handle felt ice cold even through his work gloves. Maintenance probably locked it for repairs, he muttered, reaching for his master keyring. The lock turned. Marcus pulled. The smell hit him first. Stale air, human waste, desperation. Then he saw them. Two elderly figures huddled in the corner, wrapped in tablecloths and what looked like torn curtains. The man was unconscious, his lips blue. The woman's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. "Help," she whispered. "Please." Marcus's hands shook as he radioed security. "Code red in kitchen storage. I need paramedics now. 2 people, elderly, hypothermia." "What the hell are you talking about?" The night supervisor's voice crackled back. "Williams, if this is another one of your—" "Get down here now!" Marcus stripped off his jacket and wrapped it around the woman. Her skin felt like marble. The man wasn't moving at all. "Stay with me," Marcus said, rubbing her arms carefully. "You're safe now. What's your name?" "Rose. Castellano," she breathed. "My husband, Antonio." The name hit Marcus like a punch. Castellano. He'd heard the club staff whisper that name in terrified tones, the most powerful Mafia family in the city. But that couldn't be right. What would people like that be doing, locked in a freezer? Footsteps thundered down the stairs. The supervisor burst in, followed by 2 security guards. "Holy mother of—" The supervisor grabbed his radio. "Get EMTs to the kitchen, now." "They need blankets, warm water, not hot," Marcus started. "Get away from them." A woman's voice, sharp as broken glass, cut through the chaos. Marcus looked up. A stunning brunette in a Chanel suit stood in the doorway, her face a mask of fury. Behind her, a tall man in an expensive navy suit. Marcus recognized him from photos in the club newsletter. Vincent Ashford, one of the club's major investors. The woman clutched his arm possessively. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her Italian accent thick with rage. "Ma'am, these people need medical attention," Marcus began. "Those people," she spat the words, "are trespassers, vagrants who broke into this facility." Marcus stared at her. Trespassers? They were locked in a freezer for days by the look of them. "You don't know what you're talking about." The woman's eyes blazed. "Vincent, call the police. I want this janitor arrested for assault." "Assault?" Marcus stood slowly. "I just saved their lives. You touched my parents-in-law without permission. That's assault." She turned to Vincent. "Darling, tell them." Vincent Ashford looked uncomfortable. "Isabella, perhaps we should—" "Your parents-in-law?" The supervisor's face went pale. "Mrs. Ashford, these are confused old people who wandered into a restricted area," Isabella said smoothly. "My husband and I have been searching for them everywhere. They have dementia. They don't know what they're saying." Rose Castellano's hand suddenly gripped Marcus's wrist with surprising strength. "Lies," she rasped. "She locked us." "See?" Isabella laughed, but her eyes were cold. "Completely delusional. We'll take them home now." "They need a hospital," Marcus said firmly. "Look at them. I'll decide what my in-laws need." Isabella's voice dropped, dangerously low. "You're a janitor, a nobody. You clean toilets. You don't make decisions about my family." The EMTs arrived, pushing past everyone with a stretcher. A young paramedic knelt beside Antonio, checking his pulse. "BP's critical. We need to transport now." She looked at Isabella. "Ma'am, are you family?" "I'm his daughter-in-law. We need to take them to County General. This is severe hypothermia, possible organ damage. Take them to St. Catherine's," Isabella commanded. "We have a private wing there." "Ma'am, they need emergency care, not—" "I said St. Catherine's." Isabella's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something vicious underneath. "Do you know who I am? Who my family is?" The paramedic's jaw tightened. "I know my job, ma'am." As they loaded Antonio onto the stretcher, Rose's eyes found Marcus again. She mouthed something he couldn't quite catch. It looked like, "Don't trust. Move aside, janitor." Isabella pushed past Marcus, her heel catching his foot deliberately. "Vincent, darling, come. We need to follow the ambulance." Vincent hadn't said a word the entire time. He avoided Marcus's eyes as he followed his wife. The supervisor waited until they were gone, then turned to Marcus. "Williams, my office, now." "Sir, I know what you had to do, but you just made an enemy of Isabella Castellano Ashford." The supervisor's face was grim. "Pack your things, you're done here." "You're firing me? For saving 2 people's lives?" "I'm trying to save yours. You have no idea what you've just walked into." The supervisor lowered his voice. "The Castellano family doesn't forgive. And Isabella, she's worse than all of them combined. My advice? Disappear. Tonight." Marcus looked at the freezer, at the improvised blankets, at the scratch marks on the inside of the door. 7 days. The woman had said they'd been in there 7 days. "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said quietly. "Those people need someone to speak for them." The supervisor shook his head. "Then God help you, Williams, because nobody else can." Marcus stood alone in the kitchen, the smell of the freezer still in his nostrils. He pulled out his phone and did something he'd sworn he'd never do. He dialed a number he'd kept for 20 years but never called. It rang once, twice. "Marcus?" A woman's voice, older now but unmistakable. "Marcus Williams? Is that really you?" "Hello, Rosa," Marcus said. "I need to tell you about your parents." Rosa Castellano's hands trembled as she gripped the phone. "What about my parents? Marcus, what's happened?" "They're alive, but barely. St. Catherine's Hospital. Someone locked them in a freezer at Belmore Country Club." Marcus paused. "For 7 days, Rosa." The line went silent except for her sharp intake of breath. "I'm in Milan. I can be there in..." Her voice cracked. "Who did this?" "Your brother's wife, Isabella." Another silence, longer this time. When Rosa spoke again, her voice was ice. "I'm coming. Don't let them out of your sight." Marcus hung up and leaned against the wall. 20 years since he'd heard that voice. He closed his eyes, and suddenly he was there again. The memory came unbidden, sharp as yesterday. A different kitchen, a different life. The Castellano estate in Palermo, where Marcus had worked as a young chef, fresh from culinary school. Desperate to prove himself in Italy, he'd been prepping for a dinner party when 9-year-old Rosa had burst into the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. "They're sending me away," she'd sobbed, "to boarding school in Switzerland. I don't want to go." Marcus had knelt beside her. "Why are they sending you?" "Because I'm a girl. Papa says only my brother Vincent needs to stay. Vincent gets everything. The business lessons, the family time, the respect." She'd wiped her eyes angrily. "I'm just supposed to look pretty and marry whoever they choose." "That's not right," Marcus had said quietly. "Mama agrees with Papa. She says that's how it works in our world." Rosa had looked at him with those fierce, dark eyes. "But you left your world, didn't you? You came here to chase what you wanted." Marcus had smiled sadly. "I did, and sometimes I wonder if it was worth it." That night, Antonio Castellano had found Marcus in the kitchen after everyone else had left. "You spoke with my daughter," Antonio had said. Not a question. "Yes, sir, I apologize if..." "Don't." Antonio had sat down, suddenly looking tired. "My wife and we disagree about Rosa. I think she has a mind sharper than most men I know. Maria thinks I'm being foolish." He'd poured them both wine. "What do you think, chef?" Marcus had chosen his words carefully. "I think intelligence doesn't care about gender, sir." Antonio had studied him for a long moment. "You're honest. I appreciate that." He'd raised his glass. "Two honest men. Rare in my world." They'd talked until dawn. About family, duty, the weight of legacy. Antonio had asked about Marcus's dreams, really listened to his answers. When Marcus had mentioned his mother back in Detroit, struggling with medical bills, Antonio had simply written a check. "No strings," Antonio had said, "just one honest man helping another." 2 weeks later, everything had fallen apart. Marcus had been accused of stealing from the estate, a vintage watch, priceless, found in his quarters. He'd protested his innocence, but the evidence was damning. Maria Castellano had insisted on pressing charges. Antonio had looked devastated. "I believed in you, Marcus." "I didn't take it, sir, I swear." "Then how did it appear in your room?" Marcus had had no answer. Rosa had cried, begging her father to believe him, but Maria's voice had been louder, colder. "This is what happens when you trust outsiders, Antonio. Send him back where he belongs." Marcus had been deported within 48 hours. His culinary career in Italy was over before it began. He'd returned to Detroit broken and bitter. He'd tried other restaurants, but the scandal followed him. Eventually, he'd taken a janitor job just to survive. 15 years later, he was still pushing a mop. But 5 years after the incident, a letter had arrived. From Rosa, now 14, writing from her Swiss boarding school. "Marcus, I found it. The watch, hidden in Mama's jewelry case, wrapped in a handkerchief." I confronted her. She cried and admitted she'd planted it. She was afraid of Papa's affection for you, afraid you'd influence him against family traditions. "Papa doesn't know." She made me swear silence, said if I told, it would destroy our family. "I'm a coward, Marcus. I kept her secret, but I needed you to know. I always believed you. Papa did too, in his heart. He just couldn't fight, Mama. I'm sorry. I'll carry this guilt forever. Rosa." Marcus had never responded. What was there to say? The damage was done, but he'd kept the letter. And now, standing in this hospital corridor, watching nurses rush Antonio and Rose into the ICU, he understood why he'd kept it. Because some debts transcend time. A doctor emerged, pulling off his gloves. "Family of Antonio and Rose Castellano." Marcus hesitated. "I'm the one who found them. They're stable barely. Another day, and we'd be having a very different conversation." The doctor's expression was grim. This wasn't an accident. The pattern of injuries, the dehydration levels. Someone imprisoned them deliberately. "I know who," Marcus said quietly. "Then you need to call the police. This is attempted murder." "It's complicated." "Complicated?" The doctor's voice rose. "Those people suffered for a week. The psychological trauma alone. Dr. Chen, I need to see them." A woman's voice, commanding and familiar, cut through the hallway. Marcus turned. Isabella Castellano Ashford stood there, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits who had lawyer written all over them. Vincent trailed behind, looking miserable. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but—" "Doctor," Chen began. "I'm their legal guardian. They're incompetent due to dementia. I have documentation." Isabella's smile was poisonous. "Now please bring me to my in-laws." "Your in-laws? You locked in a freezer?" Marcus stepped forward. Isabella's eyes narrowed. "You're still here? I thought you'd have the sense to run." "I'm not going anywhere." "Then you're stupider than you look." She snapped her fingers at one of the lawyers. "Restraining order. I want this man banned from this hospital and arrested if he comes within 500 feet of my family." "On what grounds?" Marcus demanded. "Harassment, assault, stalking. Take your pick." Isabella examined her nails. "By morning you'll be unemployed, unhireable, and quite possibly in jail. That's what happens to people who cross me." Dr. Chen looked between them. "Mrs. Ashford, I can't allow anyone to see the patients who might pose a danger. Are you suggesting I'd harm my own family?" Isabella's voice could have frozen water. "I'll have your medical license for that." The doctor paled. Marcus felt his phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. "Landed. At hospital in 20 minutes. Don't let that snake near them. Rosa." He looked at Isabella, at her perfectly painted face, her designer clothes, her absolute certainty that she was untouchable. "You made a mistake," Marcus said softly. "Really? What's that?" "You left them alive." Isabella's smile faded. "Excuse me? If you'd wanted them dead, you should have finished the job. Because now they can tell everyone what you did. They're senile, no one will believe them." But something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty. "Maybe, or maybe someone will listen." Marcus held her gaze. "Someone who knows exactly what you are." "And who might that be? You? A janitor?" Isabella laughed. "Please." The elevator dinged. A woman stepped out, tall, dark-haired, wearing a travel-worn Armani coat. Her eyes were the same fierce dark that Marcus remembered, just older, harder. She looked at Isabella. Isabella's face went white. "Hello, sister-in-law," Rosa Castellano said quietly. "We need to talk." Isabella recovered quickly, her shock melting into a cold smile. "Rosa, what a surprise. I thought you were busy with your little tech company in Milan. My little company is worth 3 billion euros. Rosa's voice was calm. "But thank you for your concern." "Of course. The rebel daughter who rejected the family business." Isabella's tone dripped condescension. "While I married into it and actually contributed something meaningful." "Meaningful." Rosa's eyes flicked to the ICU doors. "Is that what you call locking my parents in a freezer? Your parents wandered off. They're confused, sick. I've been caring for them while you've been too important to visit." Isabella stepped closer. "Where were you when your father's dementia got worse?" "I was there. Me and Vincent." Vincent flinched at his name but said nothing. "How convenient that their dementia only appeared after you married my brother." Rosa turned to the lawyers. "Gentlemen, I'll need copies of all guardianship papers. I'm contesting everything." One lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Castellano, the guardianship is ironclad. Multiple doctors certified." "Doctors you paid." Rosa's voice hardened. "Dr. Brennan's gambling debts mysteriously cleared. Dr. Morrison's daughter's DUI charges vanished." "Sloppy, Isabella." Isabella's smile tightened. "You can't prove anything." "I can prove my parents were healthy 6 months ago. I have videos, emails, phone conversations." Rosa pulled out her phone. "I also have security footage from Belmore Country Club. Want to guess what it shows?" The hallway went silent. "You're bluffing," Isabella said, but her voice wavered. "Am I?" Rosa turned to Dr. Chen. "Doctor, I'm Rosa Castellano, Antonio and Rose's daughter. I'm flying in specialists from Johns Hopkins. Whatever she's paying you, it's not worth your career." Dr. Chen straightened. "Ms. Castellano, I assure you, I'm treating your parents properly." "I know you are, but I need you to document everything. Every injury, every sign of deliberate harm. This becomes a police matter tonight." "You're making serious accusations," Isabella's lawyer started. "I'm stating facts." Rosa cut him off. "My parents were imprisoned and tortured. There's a witness." She nodded at Marcus. "And there will be evidence." "You mean the cameras that mysteriously malfunctioned that week?" Isabella laughed. "Such unfortunate timing." "Not all of them," Marcus said quietly. "The club installed a new security system last month. Backup servers, cloud storage. Even if someone erased the main footage, the backup exists." Isabella's face told him he'd struck gold. "Vincent!" Isabella's voice was dangerously soft. "Tell your sister she's being dramatic." Vincent stood frozen, pale. "Bella, maybe we should..." "Should what?" Isabella whirled on him. "Let your ungrateful sister destroy everything we've built." "Built?" Rosa's voice could have cut glass. "You mean stolen. I know about the accounts, Isabella, the money you've been siphoning from the family businesses. You have no proof. I have Papa's original financial records. I've been his silent partner for 3 years, ever since he started suspecting you." Rosa smiled coldly. "He's sharper than you thought. The dementia diagnosis. He was faking it. trying to catch you in the act." Isabella's mask cracked. "You're lying." "Am I?" Rosa moved toward the ICU. "Let's ask him ourselves." "You can't see them. I'm their guardian." "Actually, you're not." One of Isabella's own lawyers spoke up, uncomfortable. "If Ms. Castellano can prove fraud in obtaining guardianship, it's void." Isabella spun on him. "Whose side are you on?" "The law's, Mrs. Ashford. I'm not risking disbarment." A nurse emerged from the ICU. "The patient Antonio Castellano is awake. He's asking for his daughter Rosa." Isabella moved fast, trying to push past. "I'm going in." "Ma'am, he was very specific. Rosa Castellano only." The nurse stood her ground. Marcus watched Isabella's control dissolve like smoke. "This isn't over," Isabella hissed at Rosa. "I have judges, politicians, police chiefs in my pocket. You're nobody here." "You're right, I am nobody here." Rosa paused at the ICU entrance. "But I know people who are somebody everywhere." "And Isabella, the Castellano family went legitimate 5 years ago, all legal businesses now, which means I can use actual law enforcement." "You went soft," Isabella sneered. "No, that's why I'll win. You're still playing by old rules." Rosa's smile was pitying. "I've already called the FBI." Isabella's face went white. "What?" "Interstate fraud, elder abuse, attempted murder. Federal crimes, Isabella. They're very interested in how you acquired guardianship. You wouldn't dare. The scandal, the family name survives truth. It doesn't survive people like you." Rosa turned to Vincent. "Brother, last chance. Are you with her or with us?" Vincent looked at his wife, then at his sister. His hands shook. "Vincent," Isabella whispered, "remember everything we planned." "Children?" Rosa's laugh was bitter. "Is that what you told him? Isabella, you can't have children. I have your medical records from Milan." "Shut up!" Isabella screamed. "Vincent, she's been playing you from the start. She married you for money and power, nothing else." Vincent's face crumpled. "Bella, tell her she's wrong." Isabella had no words. "I loved you," Vincent whispered. "Love is for weak people." Isabella grabbed her purse. "Fine, keep them. Keep this sinking ship. I'll take what I've hidden and disappear." "No, you won't," Marcus spoke quietly. "The security footage shows you entering the freezer 7 times over 7 days. I watched it all and sent it to the police and to every major news outlet." Isabella stared at him. "You're just a janitor. I'm a witness," Marcus said simply, "and I've got nothing to lose." Rosa's phone buzzed. The FBI just arrived downstairs. The elevator opened. 2 federal agents stepped out. "Isabella Castellano Ashford?" Isabella ran. She made it 10 feet before they caught her, cuffing her as she screamed. Marcus watched them lead her away, her power completely gone. Rosa touched his arm. "Thank you, Marcus. I just did what was right." "No, you did what was brave." She paused. "My father's asking for you too. Will you come in?" Marcus stepped into the ICU room, his heart pounding. Antonio Castellano looked smaller than he remembered, diminished by the hospital bed and IV lines, but his eyes were the same, sharp, intelligent, alive. Rose lay in the bed beside him, holding his hand. She managed a weak smile when she saw Marcus. "Marcus Williams," Antonio said, his voice rough but steady. 20 years. I've owed you an apology for 20 years. "Mr. Castellano, you don't—" "I do." Antonio raised his hand, silencing him. "Rosa told me everything. About the watch, about her mother's confession, about the cowardice that kept me silent." Marcus glanced at Rosa, who stood quietly by the window. "I knew," Antonio continued. "Deep down, I knew Maria had lied. You weren't a thief. You were honest, decent, everything I valued." His voice cracked. "But I was weak. I chose my marriage over the truth. I chose peace over justice." "You had a family to protect," Marcus said. "That's no excuse." Antonio's eyes glistened. I destroyed your career, your reputation. I let you be deported like a criminal, and I never fought for you." The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors. "Maria died 5 years ago," Antonio said quietly. "Cancer. Before she passed, she confessed everything, asked for forgiveness." He paused. "I gave it to her, but I never forgave myself." "Mr. Castellano, Antonio, please." The old man's hand trembled. "I tried to find you, hired investigators, searched for years. You disappeared completely." "I changed my name," Marcus admitted. "Marcus Williams was my mother's maiden name. I was Marcus Romano back then." Rosa's head snapped up. "Romano, that's why we couldn't find you. I wanted to disappear. After Italy, after everything." Marcus swallowed hard. "I took a janitor job to survive. Told myself it was temporary. 15 years later, I'm still there." "No." Antonio's voice was firm despite his weakness. "You're not still there. You're here. You saved our lives. Anyone would have, but you did." Rose spoke for the first time, her voice soft. "When you could have walked away, when you had every reason to hate us." Marcus looked at her. "I never hated you, any of you." "You should have," Antonio said. "God knows you had the right." He reached out with a shaking hand. "I can't give you back those 20 years. I can't undo what I did. But I can tell you the truth now. You were innocent. You deserved better. And I failed you." Marcus felt something inside him crack open. A wound he'd carried so long, he'd forgotten it was there. "I forgive you," he heard himself say. The words felt strange, powerful. "I forgive you, Antonio." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Thank you, my friend." Rosa moved closer. "Marcus, we want to make this right, however we can." "There's nothing to make right." "I'm fine. You're a janitor with a culinary degree from Le Cordon Bleu," Rosa interrupted gently. "Papa told me about your training, your talent. You should be running your own restaurant, not cleaning floors. That ship sailed a long time ago. Then we'll build you a new ship." Antonio's voice grew stronger. "We own properties across the city, prime locations. Pick one. We'll finance your restaurant, full partnership. You run it however you want." Marcus stared at them. "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because it feels like payment, like buying forgiveness." "It's not payment," Antonio said firmly. "It's restitution. There's a difference. You earned this 20 years ago. I'm just 20 years late in delivering it." "Papa's right," Rosa added. "This isn't charity, it's justice. Finally." Marcus looked between them, this broken family trying to heal old wounds. He thought about his tiny apartment, his aching knees from years of mopping floors, his abandoned dreams. "I'll think about it," he said quietly. "Fair enough." Antonio settled back against his pillows. "But Marcus, don't think too long. I'm 83 years old. I'd like to eat at your restaurant before I die." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. "You're not dying. You're too stubborn." "Damn right I am." Antonio's grin was fierce, especially now. Isabella thought she could bury me in that freezer. Instead, she gave me a reason to fight. A knock at the door interrupted them. A police detective entered, badge displayed. "Mr. Castellano, I'm Detective Sarah Morrison. I need to take your statement about what happened." Antonio nodded. "Everything. I'll tell you everything." As the detective pulled out her notepad, Marcus moved toward the door. "Marcus," Antonio called, "don't leave town. I want you here when that woman faces trial. I want her to see the man who brought her down, the nobody janitor who destroyed her empire." Marcus paused. "I'll be here." Outside in the corridor, Vincent Ashford sat on a bench, his head in his hands. He looked up as Marcus passed. "Is it true?" Vincent asked. "What Rosa said about Isabella? All of it?" Marcus studied him, this man who'd been manipulated, used, broken. "Yes," Marcus said simply. Vincent nodded slowly, unsurprised. I was a fool. You were in love. Sometimes they're the same thing. What do I do now? Marcus thought about his own lost years, his own mistakes. You start over. It's never too late. 6 months passed, like a dream Marcus kept expecting to wake from. Isabella Castellano Ashford was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The trial had been brutal. Testimony after testimony, revealing the depth of her cruelty, her greed, her calculated manipulation. Vincent had divorced her within weeks of her arrest. Antonio and Rose recovered slowly but fully. The doctors called it miraculous. Antonio called it stubbornness. And Marcus stood in front of a renovated brownstone in Brooklyn's most vibrant neighborhood, looking at the sign above the door. Romano's, fine Italian cuisine. His name, his real name, the one he'd buried 20 years ago. You're stalling, Rosa said beside him, amused. It's your restaurant, open the door. Marcus turned the key. Inside, everything gleamed. Copper pots hanging above the open kitchen, marble counters, warm lighting that made the space feel like home. Antonio had insisted on funding everything, refusing to take no for an answer. Partnership means I invested, Antonio had said. You do the work, that's fair. The soft opening was tonight. Just family and close friends. Marcus had spent the day prepping, his hands remembering skills he thought he'd lost, pasta made from scratch, sauces simmering for hours, techniques he'd learned in Palermo a lifetime ago. Nervous? Rosa asked. Terrified, Marcus admitted. Good, that means you care. She squeezed his shoulder. You're going to be brilliant. The guests arrived at 7. Antonio and Rose moving slower but smiling wider. Vincent, quieter now but healing. A few of Marcus's old culinary school friends who'd never stopped believing in him. And surprisingly, his former supervisor from Belmore Country Club. Couldn't miss this, the supervisor said, shaking Marcus's hand. I always knew you were destined for more than mopping floors. I just didn't know how to help you get there. You helped by letting me work when no one else would, Marcus said. That mattered. Dinner was magic. Each dish Marcus presented was met with genuine delight. The pasta sang with flavor, the proteins were perfectly cooked. The desserts drew actual applause. He'd forgotten what this felt like, creating joy through food, watching people connect over a shared meal. After dinner, Antonio tapped his glass for attention. A toast, he said, standing slowly. To Marcus Romano. 20 years ago, I wronged this man terribly. I let fear and weakness destroy his dreams. His voice grew thick. He could have let bitterness destroy him. Instead, he saved my life, my wife's life. He chose kindness over revenge. Hear, hear, Rose said softly. This restaurant isn't charity, Antonio continued. It's what should have been yours all along. We're just lucky enough to be part of your journey now. He raised his glass higher. To second chances, to justice delayed but not denied, to Marcus. To Marcus, everyone echoed. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. He looked around the room, at these people who'd become family, at this space that was his, at the life he'd thought was impossible. Thank you, he managed, all of you, for believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. Later, as guests lingered over coffee, Rosa pulled Marcus aside. Papa wants to make you a formal partner in some family businesses, legitimate ones, obviously. She smiled. He trusts you. He wants you as family, not just a friend. Rosa, I can't. You can. You should. Her expression grew serious. You showed us what integrity looks like, Marcus. We need that. The family needs that. Marcus thought about the boy he'd been, arriving in Italy, full of dreams, the broken man he'd become, pushing a mop and wondering where it all went wrong. And the person he was now, scarred but standing, wounded but whole. I'll think about it, he said. You always say that. Rosa laughed. Just don't think for 20 years this time. As the last guest left, Marcus stood alone in his restaurant, his kitchen, his dream resurrected. He pulled out his phone and took a photo, posting it with a simple caption: "Never too late to start over. Never too broken to heal. Never too lost to find your way home." Within minutes, comments flooded in. Strangers inspired by his story, sharing their own struggles and second chances. Marcus smiled and turned off his phone. Tomorrow, he'd open to the public. Tomorrow, he'd face new challenges. But tonight, he'd proven something important. Kindness wins. Justice prevails. And redemption is always possible. What would you do if someone tried to destroy your dreams? Would you choose revenge or forgiveness? Share your story in the comments.